The rain lashed against the towering glass windows of the Blake mansion, a marble and gold monolith that screamed wealth in every polished detail. Inside, Naomi Blake stood poised like a queen, her silk gown shimmering under the chandelier's glow. Her raven-black hair was swept into an elegant updo, and her manicured fingers traced the rim of a crystal wine glass. At 32, Naomi was the picture of perfection. Flawless skin, piercing green eyes, and a smile that could charm or cut depending on her mood. But tonight, her gaze was cold, fixed on the storm outside, her lips curling with disdain. "Disgusting weather," she muttered, her voice sharp as the click of her stilettos on the marble floor. "It's like the world's trying to ruin my aesthetic." In the corner of the grand living room, a young maid named Lila nervously polished a silver candelabra, her hands trembling under Naomi's scrutiny. Lila, barely 20, had been with the household for 6 months, but Naomi's unpredictable temper made every day feel like a tightrope walk. "Lila," Naomi snapped, not turning her head. "Why is there a smudge on that candelabra? Do you think I pay you to be sloppy?" Lila froze, her cheeks flushing. I'm sorry, Mrs. Blake. I'll fix it right away." "You'd better," Naomi said, finally glancing at her with a look that could curdle milk. "This house is a reflection of me. One mistake, and you're out. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am," Lila whispered, her eyes downcast as she scrubbed harder. Naomi smirked, savoring the power. She thrived on control, over the staff, the mansion, and her husband, Elijah Blake, the tech genius whose fortune had built this empire. To the world, Naomi was a glamorous influencer, her Instagram flooded with thousands of likes for every curated post. But behind the filters, she was a woman obsessed with status, determined to erase any trace of imperfection from her life. Her phone buzzed on the mahogany table, and she snatched it up, scrolling through comments on her latest post, a photo of her lounging by the mansion's infinity pool. "Goddess," one follower wrote. "Living the dream," said another. Naomi's smile widened, but it faltered when she saw a critical comment. "All that wealth, and you still seem so empty." She deleted it instantly, her jaw tightening. "Empty?" she hissed under her breath. "I have everything." But as the storm roared outside, a strange unease settled in her chest. She shook it off, sipping her wine. Nothing could touch her perfect world. Not tonight. Not ever. 4 years earlier, Naomi had been a struggling model in a cramped Los Angeles apartment, her dreams of fame slipping through her fingers. She was beautiful, ambitious, and ruthless, but the industry was brutal, and her portfolio was thinning. Then she met Elijah Blake at a tech conference after-party, a lanky, awkward programmer with kind brown eyes and a nervous laugh. He was no heartthrob, but Naomi saw something else: potential. Elijah had just sold his first app for $10 million, a navigation tool for the visually impaired that had gone viral. He was on the cusp of greatness, and Naomi knew it. She turned on the charm, laughing at his jokes, brushing his arm, and listening intently as he rambled about his dreams of using tech for good. By the end of the night, Elijah was smitten. "You're different," he'd said, blushing as they stood on the balcony overlooking the city. "Most people here just talk about money. You seem like you care about more." Naomi smiled, her eyes glinting. "Oh, I care about a lot of things, Elijah. Like making a real impact. Together, we could be unstoppable." She leaned in, her perfume intoxicating, and kissed him softly. Elijah's heart was hers before the night was over. Their whirlwind romance was a masterclass in manipulation. Naomi molded herself into Elijah's ideal, supportive, elegant, and just vulnerable enough to make him feel needed. She cried about her tough childhood, a fabricated tale of struggle, and praised his brilliance, stroking his ego while steering him toward bigger ventures. When he proposed 6 months later, she accepted with tears in her eyes, already envisioning the mansion, the cars, the life she deserved. Now, in the present, Naomi stood in that very mansion, her wedding ring glinting as she sipped her wine. Elijah was still the same sweet, hard-working man, but Naomi's affection had long since faded. He was a means to an end, a key to her empire. She controlled his schedule, his wardrobe, even his friends, ensuring no one came between her and the life she'd clawed her way into. "Lila!" Naomi barked, snapping back to the present. "You're still not done? Honestly, it's like you're trying to embarrass me." Lila stammered. "I'm almost finished, Mrs. Blake. I promise." Naomi rolled her eyes and turned back to the window, oblivious to the storm's growing fury, or the figure limping toward the mansion in the distance. The next morning, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the air was thick with tension. Naomi sat at the dining table, scrolling through her phone as the staff bustled around her. The table was set for one. Elijah was at his office, working on his latest app, leaving Naomi to rule the mansion like a dictator. "Lila, this coffee is cold," Naomi said, pushing the cup away without looking up. "Make another. And don't waste my time." Lila nodded, her hands shaking as she grabbed the cup and hurried to the kitchen. In the doorway, Maria, the head housekeeper, watched with a frown. Maria had been with Elijah's family for years, long before Naomi's arrival, and she'd seen Naomi's cruelty escalate. She clenched her jaw but said nothing, knowing Naomi's wrath could cost her job. Naomi's phone rang, and she answered with a sugary tone. "Cassandra, darling. Yes, the party's all set. Only the best for my birthday. Think black tie, caviar, and a live string quartet. I've invited the top influencers, of course. No one irrelevant." She laughed, her voice dripping with self-assurance, but her mood shifted when she overheard Lila whispering to Maria in the kitchen. "She's impossible," Lila said softly. "I can't do anything right." Maria sighed. "Keep your head down, Nina. She's got no heart, that one." Naomi's eyes narrowed. She stood, her heels clicking as she stormed to the kitchen doorway. "What was that, Maria?" Maria froze, but her years of experience gave her courage. "Nothing, Mrs. Blake. Just advising Lila on her work." Naomi crossed her arms, her voice icy. "Lila's work is pathetic, and so is yours if you're defending her. You're both replaceable, you know. One call, and I'll have a dozen girls begging for your jobs." Lila's eyes filled with tears, but Maria held Naomi's gaze. "Understood, ma'am." Naomi smirked, turning back to the dining room. "Lila, you're fired. Pack your things and get out by noon." Lila gasped, her voice breaking. "But, Mrs. Blake, I need this job. My mom's sick, and—" "I don't care," Naomi snapped. "You're too slow, too clumsy, and frankly, you're ruining my vibe. Out." Maria stepped forward, her voice low. "Merquest, Mrs. Blake, please. She's just a girl. Give her another chance." Naomi laughed, cold and sharp. "Another chance? This isn't a charity, Maria. Get her out of my sight, or you're next." Lila sobbed quietly as Maria led her away, her shoulders shaking. Naomi returned to her phone, unfazed, already texting her event planner about gold-plated table settings. The mansion was her kingdom, and she ruled with an iron fist. Outside, the drizzle had thickened into a steady rain, the sky a bruised gray. A lone figure trudged along the winding road toward the mansion, his steps slow and uneven. Thomas Blake was 67, his face weathered by years of hardship, his gray hair matted from the rain. A wooden cane supported his weight, his right leg stiff from an old injury that never healed right. His clothes were threadbare, a faded jacket, patched trousers, and shoes with holes letting water seep in. Thomas paused, catching his breath, his eyes fixed on the mansion in the distance. It loomed like a castle, its lights glowing through the storm. He clutched a crumpled photo in his pocket, one of him and Elijah, taken 20 years ago when Elijah was just a boy. They were laughing, arms around each other, before life tore them apart. "I'm here, son," Thomas whispered, his voice hoarse. "I'm finally here." He'd been searching for Elijah for years, ever since he heard his son had become a millionaire. Thomas had written letters, left voicemails, but never got a reply. He assumed Elijah was too busy, maybe ashamed of his old man's poverty. But Thomas had to try one last time. He carried a folder under his jacket, stuffed with legal papers, proof he'd co-signed Elijah's first loan, the one that funded his breakthrough app. Those papers also entitled Thomas to a share of the mansion, though he didn't care about the money. He just wanted to see his son. The rain stung his face as he reached the iron gates. He pressed the intercom buzzer, his hands trembling from cold and nerves. No answer. He buzzed again, leaning heavily on his cane. Please. I'm Elijah's father. I need to see him. The wind howled, drowning his words. He buzzed a third time, desperation creeping in. Inside, Naomi was lounging on a velvet sofa, scrolling through dress options for her party, when the intercom crackled. She ignored it at first, annoyed by the interruption, but it buzzed again, insistent. For God's sake, she muttered, tossing her phone down. She strode to the security panel, her robe trailing like a royal cloak. The screen showed a soaked, haggard old man at the gate, leaning on a cane. "Who is this?" she snapped into the mic. The man's voice was faint, distorted by the rain. "I'm Thomas Blake, Elijah's father. Please, I need to see him." Naomi's brow furrowed. Elijah's father? She'd never met him, never even heard Elijah talk about him much. She assumed he was dead or some deadbeat who'd abandoned his son. This man looked like a vagrant, his clothes filthy, his face gaunt. "What do you want?" she demanded. I need to talk to Elijah. It's important. Please." Naomi's lip curled. This was no father of a millionaire. He was a con artist, probably after money. She'd seen his kind before, leeches sniffing around wealth. Her eyes flicked to the folder he clutched, half hidden under his jacket. Probably fake sob stories or forged documents. "Listen, old man," she said, her voice venomous. "I don't know who you think you are, but you're not fooling anyone. Get off my property before I call the cops." Thomas's face crumpled, his voice pleading. "I'm not lying. I'm his father. I have proof. Please, just tell him I'm here." Naomi laughed, a cruel, cutting sound. "Proof? You look like you crawled out of a gutter. Elijah doesn't have time for beggars. Go back to wherever you came from." She jabbed the mute button, silencing his response. On the screen, Thomas sagged, his shoulders shaking as he pressed the buzzer again. Naomi watched, her expression hard as stone. "Pathetic," she muttered. With a final glance, she opened the gate, just long enough to let him think he'd won, then slammed it shut as he limped forward. Thomas stumbled, nearly falling, his cane slipping on the wet pavement. He stood there, rain streaming down his face, staring at the closed gate. Naomi turned away, already dismissing him. She had a party to plan, a life to perfect. Whoever that man was, he was nothing to her. The rain pounded relentlessly, turning the mansion's driveway into a glistening sheet of water. Thomas Blake stood frozen outside the iron gates, his frail frame trembling under the weight of the storm and Naomi's venomous words. His cane sank slightly into the muddy ground, his knuckles white as he gripped it for support. The folder of documents, proof of his identity and his stake in Elijah's success, was soaked, tucked tightly under his jacket. His gray eyes, clouded with pain, stared at the mansion's glowing lights, so close yet impossibly far. "Elijah!" he whispered, his voice lost in the wind. He buzzed the intercom again, desperation clawing at his chest. "Please. I'm your father." Inside, Naomi Blake stood by the security panel, her arms crossed, her green eyes glinting with disdain. The screen showed Thomas's pathetic figure, hunched and shivering. She felt no pity, only irritation. This man was a threat to her carefully curated world, a stain on her perfect image. She jabbed the mute button again, ensuring his pleas went unheard. "Disgusting," she muttered, brushing a speck of imaginary dust from her silk robe. Crawling out of nowhere, thinking he can just waltz in. She turned away from the panel, her heels clicking on the marble floor as she strode back to the living room. The velvet sofa welcomed her as she sank into it, picking up her phone to resume scrolling through party plans. But a nagging unease lingered. What if this man was Elijah's father? What if he had something, documents, proof, that could complicate her control over Elijah's empire? Naomi's thoughts were interrupted by Maria, the head housekeeper, who appeared in the doorway, her expression tight. Maria's dark hair was pulled into a severe bun, and her weathered hands clasped nervously in front of her apron. "Mrs. Blake," Maria said cautiously, "I heard the intercom. Is everything all right?" Naomi's eyes narrowed. Maria had been with Elijah's family too long, her loyalty questionable. "It's nothing," Naomi snapped. "Some homeless man claiming he knows Elijah. I handled it." Maria's brow furrowed, but she nodded. "Should I inform Mr. Blake when he returns?" Naomi's head whipped around, her voice sharp as a blade. "You'll do no such thing, Maria. This is my house, and I decide what Elijah needs to know. Understand?" Maria hesitated, then lowered her gaze. "Yes, ma'am." As Maria retreated, Naomi's mind raced. She needed to ensure this incident stayed buried. Elijah was too soft, too sentimental. If he learned about this man, he might dig deeper, and Naomi couldn't risk that. She glanced at the security panel, confirming the gate was locked. The old man was gone, or so she thought. Outside, Thomas stumbled back from the gate, his bad leg buckling. He caught himself on his cane, rain streaming down his face, mixing with silent tears. The rejection stung deeper than the cold. He'd come so far, endured so much, only to be turned away like a stray dog. But he wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Hours later, the storm had eased to a drizzle, and Elijah Blake's sleek black Tesla pulled into the mansion's driveway. He stepped out, his lanky frame dressed in a simple button-down and jeans, his brown eyes tired but warm. At 35, Elijah was a man of quiet brilliance. His tech empire built on apps that helped the vulnerable. Tools for the disabled, navigation for the blind, communication for the mute. But success hadn't changed his core. He was still the boy who'd grown up in a cramped apartment, raised by a father who sacrificed everything. Inside, Naomi greeted him with a practiced smile, her silk gown replaced by a casual but chic sweater and skirt. "Darling," she purred, kissing his cheek. "You're soaked. Let me get you a drink." Elijah smiled faintly, setting his briefcase down. "Just a long day. How was yours?" Naomi's heart skipped, but her face betrayed nothing. She poured him a scotch, her movements deliberate. "Oh, the usual. Party planning, dealing with incompetent staff. You know how it is." Elijah nodded, sipping the drink. "Anything else? You seem tense." Naomi laughed, a melodic sound that masked her nerves. "Tense? Me? Well, there was one little annoyance. Some homeless man showed up at the gate, rambling about knowing you. Probably looking for a handout." Elijah's brow creased. "A homeless man? What did he say?" Naomi waved a hand dismissively, perching on the arm of his chair. "Oh, nothing coherent. Just some nonsense about being family. I told him to get lost before he caused trouble. You don't need that kind of stress, darling." Elijah frowned, his fingers tightening around the glass. "Family? Did he give a name?" Naomi's pulse quickened, but she kept her tone light. "No, just some old drunk. I didn't bother asking. You know how these people are, always trying to scam their way in." Elijah's gaze drifted to the window, his expression troubled. "Maybe I should check the security footage, just to be sure." Naomi's smile stiffened. "Oh, don't waste your time. The system's been glitchy lately. Half the footage is blank. Besides, I handled it. You trust me, don't you?" Elijah hesitated, then nodded, his shoulders relaxing. "Of course. Thanks for dealing with it." Naomi leaned in, brushing his hair back with a tender gesture. "Anything for you, love. Now, tell me about your day." As Elijah launched into a story about a new app prototype, Naomi's mind churned. She needed to erase any trace of that old man's visit, starting with the security system. Across the street, in a modest but tidy bungalow, Mrs. Evelyn Carter sat at her kitchen table, her laptop open. At 70, Evelyn was the neighborhood's unofficial watchdog, her sharp eyes missing nothing. She'd lived here for decades, long before the Blake mansion became a symbol of excess. Tonight, her curiosity had led her to review footage from her own security camera, which overlooked the mansion's gate. Evelyn adjusted her glasses, replaying the clip. It showed Thomas Blake limping up to the gate, buzzing the intercom, and then Naomi's voice, harsh and unmistakable, berating him. The camera's audio was faint, but Evelyn caught enough. "Get off my property. You're not fooling anyone." Then, the gate opened briefly, only to slam shut as Thomas stumbled forward. Evelyn's lips pursed. "That poor man," she murmured. "Who treats someone like that?" She'd known Elijah since he moved in, a kind young man who'd once helped her fix a leaky pipe. Naomi, on the other hand, had always rubbed her the wrong way, arrogant, dismissive, and obsessed with appearances. Evelyn's instincts told her this wasn't just a random encounter. The old man had said he was Elijah's father. If true, this was a scandal waiting to explode. Evelyn hesitated, her finger hovering over the "save" button. She could send the clip to Elijah or even post it online. But she knew Naomi's wrath could be fierce, and Evelyn wasn't one for confrontation. Still, she saved the file, naming it Mansion Incident. For now, she'd keep it quiet, but she wouldn't forget. Back at the mansion, Naomi slipped into the security room after Elijah went to bed. The system was state-of-the-art, but she'd learned the basics from Elijah. She accessed the day's footage, her heart pounding as she saw Thomas's figure on the screen. With a few clicks, she deleted the files, ensuring no trace remained. Satisfied, she shut down the system and returned to her room, confident her secret was safe. Thomas Blake sat on a damp bench outside a nearby shelter, the rain now a faint mist. His clothes were still soaked, his bad leg throbbing, but the pain in his heart was worse. The shelter was a grim, overcrowded place, its fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows. Thomas clutched the folder of documents, now slightly warped from the rain, and pulled out the old photo of him and Elijah. In the picture, Elijah was 12, gap-toothed and grinning, his arm around Thomas's shoulder. They'd been at a county fair, eating cotton candy, carefree despite their poverty. Thomas's wife had died when Elijah was young, leaving him to raise their son alone. He'd worked double shifts as a janitor, skipping meals to afford Elijah's school supplies. Every sacrifice was worth it to see his boy thrive. "I never stopped looking for you," Thomas whispered, tracing Elijah's face in the photo. "Why didn't you answer my letters?" He'd sent dozens over the years, using every address he could find for Elijah's company. He'd called, too, leaving voicemails that went unreturned. At first, he thought Elijah was ashamed of him, a poor, disabled father who didn't fit into a millionaire's world. But tonight, Naomi's cruelty made him wonder. Did Elijah even know he'd been trying to reach him? A shelter volunteer, a kind-eyed woman named Sarah, approached with a blanket. "Sir, you should come inside. You'll catch your death out here." Thomas managed a weak smile. "Thank you, miss. Just need a moment." Sarah sat beside him, her voice gentle. "You look like you've been through something. Want to talk?" Thomas hesitated, then spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "I came to see my son. He lives in that big mansion up the road. But his wife, she wouldn't let me in. Called me a beggar." Sarah's eyes widened. "That's awful. Did you get to talk to your son?" Thomas shook his head. "No. I don't think he even knows I was there. I just wanted to see him, tell him I'm proud. I brought papers, proof I helped him start his company. Not for money, just to show I was part of his life." Sarah squeezed his shoulder. "You're a good father. Don't give up. Maybe there's another way to reach him." Thomas nodded, her words sparking a flicker of hope. He tucked the photo away and limped inside, determined to try again. The next morning, Naomi was in her home office, a sleek space filled with designer furniture and framed photos of herself. She sipped an espresso, reviewing RSVPs for her upcoming birthday party, when Maria knocked softly. "Mrs. Blake, the mail," Maria said, holding a stack of envelopes. Naomi barely looked up. "Leave it on the desk." Maria hesitated, then placed the stack down, her eyes lingering on one envelope. It was plain, slightly crumpled, addressed to Elijah in shaky handwriting. Maria recognized the return address, a shelter downtown. Her gut told her it was important, but Naomi's presence made her hold her tongue. As Maria left, Naomi sifted through the mail, tossing bills and invitations aside. Her fingers paused on the shelter's envelope. She tore it open, her eyes scanning the letter inside. It was from Thomas Blake, written in careful, uneven script. Dear Elijah, I came to see you last night, but I couldn't get past the gate. I'm your father, and I've been trying to reach you for years. I have documents about the loan we took for your first app. I don't want money, just to see you, to know you're okay. I'm staying at the Hope Shelter. Please, son, call me. Love, Dad. Naomi's blood ran cold. This was worse than she'd thought. The old man wasn't just a nuisance. He had proof, a claim to Elijah's empire. If Elijah saw this, he'd dig deeper, and her control could unravel. She glanced at the fireplace, its flames crackling softly. Without a second thought, she tossed the letter into the fire, watching it curl and blacken. The documents Thomas mentioned worried her, but she'd deal with those if they surfaced. For now, Elijah would remain in the dark. Naomi leaned back, her lips curving into a smug smile. No one's taking this life from me, she whispered. Not some old man, and not Elijah. But across town, at the shelter, Thomas was writing another letter, his resolve unbroken. And in Evelyn's bungalow, the security footage waited, a ticking time bomb ready to expose Naomi's cruelty. The Blake mansion buzzed with preparations for Naomi's 33rd birthday, a spectacle designed to cement her status as the city's reigning influencer. The grand ballroom was a vision of opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms across gold-trimmed walls, tables groaned under caviar and champagne, and a string quartet tuned their instruments in the corner. Naomi stood at the center of it all, inspecting every detail with a predator's precision. Her emerald gown hugged her figure, its train sweeping the marble floor, and her diamond necklace sparkled like a crown. "Move that centerpiece," she barked at a flustered caterer, pointing to a floral arrangement. "It's blocking my sightline from the head table. Do you want me to look cheap?" The caterer stammered an apology, rushing to comply. Naomi's eyes swept the room, landing on Maria, the head housekeeper, who was directing staff with quiet efficiency. Maria's presence was a constant irritant, too loyal to Elijah, too observant. Naomi made a mental note to replace her after the party. Her phone buzzed with a text from Cassandra, her event planner. Guest list finalized. 200 VIPs, influencers, CEOs, no nobodies. You're the star. Naomi smirked, typing back, "Perfect. No riffraff. This is MY night." She'd curated the guest list with surgical precision, excluding anyone who didn't elevate her brand. Elijah's co-workers, a group of nerdy programmers, were out, too dowdy for her aesthetic. His childhood friends? Forgotten. Family? Non-existent, as far as Naomi was concerned. She'd even vetoed Elijah's suggestion to invite a distant cousin, claiming the venue was at capacity. The truth was simpler. Naomi wanted no reminders of Elijah's humble roots. Elijah entered the ballroom, looking out of place in his simple blazer among the glittering chaos. His brown eyes scanned the preparations, a faint frown creasing his brow. "Naomi, this is a lot. Are you sure we needed the ice sculpture?" Naomi turned, her smile saccharine. "Darling, it's my birthday. I deserve perfection. Don't you want me to shine?" Elijah rubbed his neck, uneasy. "Of course, but I thought we might invite some of my team. They've been working hard, and your team." Naomi laughed, cutting him off. "Elijah, this isn't a company picnic. These are important people. People who matter to our future. Your coders can celebrate at a bar somewhere." Elijah's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Fine. It's your day." Naomi kissed his cheek, her touch calculated. "Thank you, love. Now, go change. You can't wear that blazer to my party." As Elijah left, Naomi's smile faded. His questions were becoming a problem. She needed to keep him distracted, pliable. The party would be her triumph, a glittering shield against any cracks in her perfect world. The night of the party, The mansion glowed like a beacon, its windows spilling light onto the manicured lawns. Guests arrived in a parade of luxury cars, their designer outfits flashing under paparazzi cameras. Naomi held court at the ballroom's entrance, her laughter ringing as she posed for photos with influencers and local celebrities. Elijah stood beside her, smiling politely but clearly uncomfortable in his tailored tuxedo. Inside, the party was a whirlwind of excess. Champagne flowed, a celebrity DJ spun tracks, and waiters circulated with trays of lobster canapes. Naomi basked in the adoration, her Instagram live stream racking up thousands of views. "Look at this, my loves," she cooed into her phone, panning across the room. "This is how you celebrate a queen." But not everyone was charmed. Maria moved silently through the crowd, refilling glasses and clearing plates. Her sharp eyes noticed everything: Naomi's fake smiles, Elijah's quiet discomfort, the absence of anyone who truly knew him. She'd worked for Elijah's family since he was a boy, and this extravagance felt like a betrayal of the humble man she'd watched grow up. In the kitchen, Maria paused to catch her breath, her hands trembling with frustration. A young waiter, Javier, noticed her distress. "You okay, Maria?" he asked, wiping his hands on his apron. Maria shook her head, her voice low. "This isn't right, Javier. This party, this woman, it's all for her. Mr. Blake deserves better." Javier glanced around, ensuring no one was listening. "What do you mean? He's got all this money, this house." "It's not about money," Maria snapped, then softened. "There's something you don't know. A few days ago, an old man came to the gate. He said he was Mr. Blake's father. I saw him, Javier, limping, soaked from the rain. Mrs. Blake turned him away, slammed the gate in his face." Javier's eyes widened. "His father? And Elijah didn't know?" Maria nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "I tried to tell Mr. Blake, but she watches me like a hawk. I'm scared, Javier. If I speak up, she'll fire me, or worse." Before Javier could respond, Naomi's voice cut through the kitchen. "Maria, why are you standing around? The champagne flutes need refilling." Maria stiffened, turning to see Naomi in the doorway, her gown shimmering like a weapon. "Yes, Mrs. Blake," Maria said, grabbing a tray. But as she passed Elijah in the ballroom, Maria couldn't hold back. She leaned close, her voice urgent. "Sir, your father was here. I saw him. A few days ago, at the gate." Elijah froze, the champagne flute in his hand trembling. "My father? Maria, what are you talking about?" Maria glanced at Naomi, who was distracted by a group of influencers. "He came in the rain, sir. Mrs. Blake sent him away. Maria." Naomi's voice sliced through, her eyes blazing as she approached. "What are you whispering about? Get back to work." Maria's face paled, and she hurried away, leaving Elijah stunned. Naomi linked her arm through his, her smile tight. "Ignore her, darling. She's been acting strange all night. Probably drank too much." Elijah's eyes searched hers, a storm brewing behind his calm facade. "Naomi, what did Maria mean about my father?" Naomi laughed, waving a hand. "Oh, she's confused. Probably some delivery man she mistook for someone else. Let's not ruin the party, Elijah nodded slowly, but his gut churned. Maria wasn't one to lie. As Naomi dragged him into a dance, his mind raced, the seed of doubt taking root. The next morning, the mansion was a mess of empty bottles and wilting flowers, the aftermath of Naomi's extravaganza. Elijah sat in his home office, a sleek room lined with tech awards and framed patents. His laptop was open, but he wasn't working. Maria's words echoed in his mind. "Your father was here. I saw him." Elijah hadn't seen his father, Thomas, in over a decade. Their last contact was a strained phone call after Elijah's first app took off. Thomas had been proud but distant, struggling with debt and health issues. Elijah sent money, offered help, but Thomas refused, insisting he didn't want to be a burden. Then, silence. Elijah assumed his father had passed or chosen to disappear. But Maria's comment changed everything. He opened the security system's interface, his fingers hesitating over the keyboard. Naomi's story about a homeless man and a glitchy system hadn't sat right, and now Maria's revelation added weight to his unease. He navigated to the footage from the past week, his heart sinking as he saw the files were blank, every clip from the day Naomi mentioned, wiped clean. "Damn it," he muttered, leaning back. "This wasn't a glitch. Someone had tampered with the system." Naomi appeared in the doorway, her yoga outfit pristine, a smoothie in hand. "Elijah, you're up early. Working on something exciting." Elijah closed the laptop, his tone measured. "Just checking the security system. Seems like some footage is missing." Naomi's smile didn't waver, but her eyes flickered. "Oh, that old thing. I told you it's been acting up. We should get a new one." Elijah studied her, searching for a crack in her composure. "Naomi," Maria said something last night. "About my father being at the gate. What really happened that day?" Naomi set her smoothie down, her laugh light but strained. "Elijah, I told you, a dirty old man showed up, claiming he knew you. I sent him away." Maria's blowing it out of proportion. "You know how she gets." Elijah's jaw tightened. "She said he was my father, Naomi. Why didn't you tell me?" Naomi stepped closer, her voice softening. "Darling, I didn't want to worry you. He was probably a con artist. I was protecting you." Elijah stood, his height towering over her. "Protecting me? Or hiding something?" Naomi's eyes flashed, but she recovered quickly, touching his arm. "Elijah, you're being paranoid. Let's not fight over some housekeeper's gossip." Elijah pulled away, his voice firm. "I'm going to find out what happened, Naomi. One way or another." As he left the room, Naomi's facade cracked, her hands clenching. She needed to act fast, before Elijah uncovered the truth. Later that day, Elijah wandered the mansion's sprawling gardens, needing air to clear his head. The roses were in full bloom, their scent heavy in the humid afternoon. He spotted Juan, the gardener, trimming hedges near the gate. Juan was a quiet man in his 50s, his hands calloused from years of work. He'd been with the estate since Elijah bought it, a steady presence who rarely spoke unless spoken to. "Juan," Elijah called, approaching. "Got a minute?" Juan set down his shears, wiping sweat from his brow. "Of course, Mr. Blake." Elijah hesitated, then asked, "Were you here last week, around the time that man came to the gate? The one Naomi sent away?" Juan's eyes flickered with unease, his gaze dropping to the ground. I was working, sir. I saw something." Elijah's heart raced. "What did you see?" Juan shifted, his voice low. "An old man, limping with a cane. He buzzed the intercom, said he was your father. Mrs. Blake." She yelled at him, called him a dirty street beggar. She opened the gate, then closed it when he tried to come in. He almost fell. Elijah's fists clenched, anger surging. "Why didn't you tell me?" Juan looked ashamed. "I wanted to, sir, but Mrs. Blake, she's not kind to those who cross her. I've got a family, bills. I couldn't risk my job." Elijah nodded, his voice tight. "I understand. Thank you, Juan. This stays between us." As Juan returned to his work, Elijah stared at the gate, his mind reeling. Naomi had lied, deliberately, cruelly. The man at the gate was his father, and she'd left him in the rain, humiliated. The betrayal cut deep, but Elijah needed proof. He needed to find Thomas. That evening, Elijah slipped out of the mansion without telling Naomi, his Tesla gliding silently through the city. He'd called 3 shelters, using the vague description from Juan and Maria. An older man, disabled, possibly named Thomas. The first 2 were dead ends, but the third, Hope Shelter, confirmed a man matching the description had checked in recently. The shelter was a squat, gray building in a rough part of town, its neon sign flickering. Elijah parked, his heart pounding as he entered. The air smelled of bleach and stale coffee, and the lobby was crowded with tired faces. A volunteer, Sarah, greeted him, her kind eyes assessing his nervous demeanor. "I'm looking for a man named Thomas Blake," Elijah said. "Older, uses a cane. He might have said he's my father." Sarah's face lit up. "Thomas? He's here. Been talking about his son a lot. Follow me." She led Elijah through a maze of cots to a quiet corner where Thomas sat, reading a tattered book. His gray hair was combed neatly, but his clothes were still worn, his cane propped beside him. Elijah froze, memories flooding back, his father teaching him to code, bandaging his scraped knees, working late to keep them afloat. "Dad!" Elijah's voice broke. Thomas looked up, his eyes widening. "Elijah!" They moved toward each other, Thomas struggling to stand. Elijah closed the gap, pulling his father into a tight embrace. Tears streamed down both their faces, years of pain and separation melting in that moment. "I thought I'd lost you," Elijah whispered. Thomas clutched his son's shoulders, his voice choked. "I tried, son. I tried to find you. She wouldn't let me in." Elijah pulled back, his eyes blazing. "Naomi, I know. I'm going to fix this, Dad. I promise." As they sat, Thomas recounted the night at the gate, the letters Naomi never delivered, the documents proving his role in Elijah's success. Elijah listened, his anger hardening into resolve. Naomi's lies were unraveling, and he'd make sure she faced the consequences. The Hope Shelter's dim, fluorescent-lit dormitory buzzed with the low hum of murmured conversations and the occasional cough. Elijah Blake stood frozen, his heart hammering as he faced his father, Thomas Blake, for the first time in over a decade. Thomas, 67, sat on a narrow cot, his weathered face illuminated by a flickering overhead light. His gray hair was neatly combed, but his clothes were threadbare, and his wooden cane rested against the bed. His gray eyes, wide with disbelief, locked onto Elijah's, brimming with a mix of hope and pain. "Dad!" Elijah's voice cracked, barely above a whisper. Thomas's book slipped from his hands, landing with a soft thud on the cot. "Elijah!" His voice trembled, thick with emotion, as he struggled to stand, his bad leg protesting. Elijah closed the distance in 3 strides, pulling his father into a fierce embrace. Thomas's frail frame shook as he clung to his son, his fingers digging into Elijah's jacket. Tears streamed down both their faces, the weight of years apart dissolving in the warmth of their reunion. The shelter's noise faded, leaving only the sound of their ragged breaths and muffled sobs. "I thought I'd lost you," Elijah whispered, his voice choked. "I sent money, letters. Why didn't you answer?" Thomas pulled back slightly, his hands gripping Elijah's shoulders, his eyes searching his son's face. "I tried, son. I wrote to you, called, left messages. I came to your house, but she wouldn't let me in. She called me a beggar, slammed the gate in my face." Elijah's jaw tightened, anger flaring at the mention of Naomi. "Naomi, I know. Maria and Juan told me enough to start looking. I'm so sorry, Dad." They sat on the cot, knees touching, as if afraid the moment might vanish. Sarah, the shelter volunteer who'd led Elijah to Thomas, lingered nearby, her kind eyes misty. "I'll give you two some space," she said softly, retreating to the front desk. Thomas clutched a crumpled photo from his pocket, showing it to Elijah. It was them at a county fair, Elijah 12 and grinning, Thomas laughing beside him. "I kept this," Thomas said, his voice breaking, "to remember the good days. You were my whole world, Elijah." Elijah's throat tightened as he traced the photo. Memories flooded back, coding lessons at their rickety kitchen table, Thomas skipping meals to buy Elijah's first computer. "You're still my world, Dad. I never stopped looking for you." Thomas's gaze dropped, shame flickering. "I didn't want to burden you. After your app took off, I was just a broke old man. I thought you'd be ashamed." "Ashamed?" Elijah's voice rose, incredulous. "Dad, you're the reason I succeeded. You co-signed that loan for my first app. You believed in me when no one else did." Thomas managed a weak smile, pulling a waterlogged folder from under his jacket. "I brought the papers. The loan agreement, my signature. Not for money, just to show you I was part of it." Elijah took the folder, his fingers trembling. "This changes everything. You're not just my father, you're my partner. And you're coming home with me." Thomas hesitated, fear in his eyes. "Your wife, she won't want me there." Elijah's expression hardened. "She doesn't get a say anymore. This is our home, Dad. Yours and mine." The shelter's small common room was quieter now, most residents asleep or scattered. Elijah and Thomas sat at a chipped table, the folder of documents open between them. The papers were creased but legible, a loan agreement from 15 years ago, Thomas's signature bold beside Elijah's. There were also copies of letters Thomas had sent, dozens addressed to Elijah's company, each unanswered. Elijah flipped through them, his anger growing with every page. "You wrote all these? And called my office?" Thomas nodded, his hands clasped tightly. "Every month, 4 years. I left voicemails, too. Your secretary, Linda, she was kind, but she'd say you were busy. After a while, I stopped trying. Then I heard you'd moved to the mansion, so I came myself." Elijah's mind raced. Linda had never mentioned calls from his father. Had Naomi intercepted those, too? "What did you say at the gate that night?" he asked, needing every detail. Thomas's voice grew heavy. "I buzzed the intercom, told her I was your father, that I had proof. She laughed, Elijah. Called me a dirty street beggar, said I was a con artist. She opened the gate, let me think I could come in, then slammed it shut. I fell, almost broke my cane." Elijah's fists clenched, his knuckles white. "She lied to me. Said it was some homeless man, that the security footage was glitched. She deleted it, Dad. She made sure I'd never know." Thomas's eyes darkened with understanding. "She's scared, son. Scared of losing what you built. Those papers," he tapped the folder, "they prove I own a share of your first app, maybe even the mansion. She saw the folder that night. She knew." Elijah leaned back, processing the betrayal. Naomi hadn't just turned his father away, she'd erased him, systematically, to protect her empire. "Why didn't you fight harder?" he asked, not accusing, but desperate to understand. Thomas sighed, his shoulders sagging. "I was tired, Elijah. Broke, sick, limping on a bad leg. When she slammed that gate, it felt like the world saying I didn't belong. But I never stopped loving you." Elijah reached across the table, squeezing his father's hand. "You belong, Dad. And I'm going to make this right. Starting tonight." They talked for hours, piecing together the years apart. Thomas shared stories of his struggles, hospital bills, eviction, the shelter's grim reality. Elijah recounted his rise to wealth, the loneliness behind the mansion's walls. Each word rebuilt their bond, but Elijah's resolve hardened. Naomi's deception was a wound that demanded justice. The Tesla glided through the city's dark streets, the mansion's iron gates looming ahead. Elijah drove, his jaw set, while Thomas sat beside him, clutching his cane and the folder. The rain had stopped, but the air was heavy, charged with the confrontation to come. Thomas's hands trembled, his eyes fixed on the mansion's glowing windows. "You sure about this, son?" Thomas asked, his voice low. "She won't take kindly to me showing up." Elijah's grip tightened on the wheel. "I'm sure. This is your home, too. She can't change that." They pulled into the driveway, the mansion's marble facade gleaming under floodlights. Elijah helped Thomas out of the car, steadying him as they approached the front door. Thomas's limp was pronounced, but his head was high, pride overriding pain. Inside, Naomi was in the living room, scrolling through her phone, still basking in the glow of her birthday party's social media buzz. She wore a silk robe, her hair loose, oblivious to the storm about to break. The doorbell chimed, and she frowned, setting her phone down. "Who the hell is that at this hour?" she muttered, striding to the foyer. She opened the door, and her breath caught. Elijah stood there, his eyes cold, and beside him was Thomas, cleaned up but unmistakable, his cane tapping the ground, the folder under his arm. Naomi's face paled, her composure cracking. "Elijah!" Her voice was sharp, forced. "What's going on? Who's this?" Elijah's tone was steel. "You know exactly who this is, Naomi. My father. The man you locked out in the rain." Naomi's eyes darted to Thomas, then back to Elijah, her mind scrambling. "Darling, I told you, that was a misunderstanding. He looked like a—" "Stop!" Elijah cut her off, stepping inside with Thomas. "I found him, Naomi. At a shelter. He told me everything. The gate, the lies, the letters you burned." Naomi's smile faltered, her hands clenching. "Letters? Elijah, you're being ridiculous. This man's clearly manipulating you. Look at him." Thomas stepped forward, his voice steady despite his frailty. "I'm Thomas Blake, Mrs. Blake. I raised your husband, co-signed his first loan. I've got the papers to prove it." He tapped the folder, his eyes locked on hers. "You saw them that night. That's why you turned me away." Naomi's laugh was shrill, desperate. "Papers? Some forged nonsense, no doubt. Elijah, you can't seriously believe this vagrant over me." Elijah's gaze was unrelenting. "I believe him, Naomi. And I believe Maria and Juan, who saw what you did. You're done controlling this house." Naomi's face twisted, her voice rising. "You're throwing away our life for him? I built this with you, Elijah. I made you who you are." Elijah shook his head, his voice low but firm. "You built your image, Naomi. Not our life. Dad's staying. Get used to it." The next evening, the mansion's dining room was tense, the long mahogany table set for three. Crystal glasses gleamed under the chandelier, but the mood was anything but celebratory. Elijah sat at the head, Thomas to his right, cleaned up in a borrowed suit, his cane propped nearby. Naomi sat opposite, her emerald eyes blazing, her smile a brittle mask. The staff served roasted lamb and asparagus, but the food went untouched. Elijah had spent the day with Thomas, arranging a guest suite and contacting a lawyer to review the loan documents. The papers were airtight. Thomas owned a 20% stake in Elijah's first app, now worth millions, and a partial claim to the mansion. Elijah hadn't told Naomi the full extent, wanting to gauge her reaction first. Naomi sipped her wine, her voice saccharine. "So, Thomas, tell me about yourself. I'm sure you have fascinating stories from the shelter." Thomas met her gaze, unflinched. "Not much to tell, Mrs. Blake. Worked as a janitor, raised my boy alone after his mom passed. Hard times, but I'm proud of what we built together." He nodded at Elijah, a quiet strength in his words. Naomi's smile tightened. "How touching. And these papers you brought? Convenient timing, don't you think?" Elijah set his fork down, his voice calm but cutting. "Not convenient, Naomi. Necessary. Dad's moving in. And those papers? They prove he owns part of this mansion. He's not a guest, he's family." Naomi's glass froze halfway to her lips, her face draining of color. "Owns? Elijah, you can't be serious. This is our home." "It's our home," Elijah corrected, gesturing to himself and Thomas. "Dad's name is on the original loan that started everything. He's got rights here, legally and morally." Thomas spoke, his tone measured. "I don't want to take anything from you, Mrs. Blake. I just want my son back. But I won't be pushed out again." Naomi's eyes darted between them, panic rising. "This is absurd. You're letting this man ruin us, Elijah. Think about our reputation, my brand." Elijah leaned forward, his voice low and final. "Your brand's built on lies, Naomi. And I'm done protecting it." The room fell silent, the weight of Elijah's words hanging heavy. Naomi's hands trembled, her perfect world cracking. Outside, a neighbor's security camera held a secret that would soon shatter her empire completely. But for now, the dinner table was a battlefield, and Naomi was losing ground. The Blake mansion stood silent under a gray dawn, its marble facade hiding the storm brewing within. Naomi Blake sat in her home office, her emerald eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night. Her phone vibrated incessantly, notifications piling up like vultures circling a carcass. She ignored them, her manicured nails tapping nervously on the desk. Since Elijah's bombshell at dinner, declaring Thomas's legal claim to the mansion, Naomi's carefully curated world had begun to crack. Now, a new threat loomed. Across the street, Mrs. Evelyn Carter, the sharp-eyed neighbor, had made a decision. The security footage of Naomi slamming the gate on Thomas had sat on her laptop for days, a moral weight she could no longer ignore. Evelyn, at 70, was no tech wizard, but she knew the power of the internet. She uploaded the clip to a local community forum, titling it, "Millionaire's Wife Abuses Elderly Man at Blake Mansion." Within hours, it was shared across X, TikTok, and YouTube, the grainy video going viral with millions of views. The clip was damning, Naomi's venomous voice, "Get off my property, you dirty beggar," followed by Thomas's stumble as the gate slammed shut. Comments exploded. "Heartless! Who treats a disabled man like that? Is this Elijah Blake's wife?" The hashtag Naomi Blake scandal trended, shredding her influencer image. Naomi's phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Cassandra, her event planner and closest ally. She answered, her voice tight. "What is it, Cassandra? Have you seen the video?" Cassandra's tone was panicked. "It's everywhere, Naomi. People are calling you a monster. My DMs are flooded with hate for even working with you." Naomi's stomach dropped. "What video? What are you talking about?" Cassandra sent a link. Naomi clicked it, her breath catching as the footage played. Her own voice, cruel and unmistakable, echoed through the speakers. She froze, the room spinning. Who did this?" she whispered. "Doesn't matter," Cassandra snapped. "Your sponsors are pulling out. You need to do damage control now." Naomi ended the call, her hands shaking. She opened X, scrolling through a torrent of vitriol, disgusting human being. Hope Elijah divorces her. Justice for that old man. Her follower count plummeted by thousands every minute. She slammed the phone down, her scream echoing through the empty office. Downstairs, Elijah sat with Thomas in the living room, reviewing the loan documents with a lawyer on speakerphone. The viral video popped up on Elijah's phone, sent by a coworker. He watched it, his jaw tightening, then showed it to Thomas. "That's her," Thomas said quietly, his voice heavy. "That's what she did to me." Elijah's eyes blazed. "She can't hide anymore, Dad. The world's seeing her for who she is." By midday, Naomi's empire was in freefall. Her inbox overflowed with emails from sponsors, luxury fashion brands, skincare companies, even a jewelry line, all terminating their contracts. "Due to recent events, we can no longer associate with your brand," one read. Her Instagram, once a shrine of curated perfection, was a war zone of hate comments and unfollows. Her 1.2 million followers had dropped to under 800,000 in hours. Naomi paced the living room, her silk robe disheveled, her hair falling from its usual flawless updo. She called her PR agent, Marcus, her voice shrill. "Fix this, Marcus. Spin it as a misunderstanding, say the video's edited, anything." Marcus's voice was grim. "Naomi, there's no spinning this. The audio's clear, the footage is unedited. My advice? Go silent, maybe issue an apology later. But right now, you're radioactive." "Silent," Naomi shrieked. "My career's dying, and you want me to do nothing? I'm Naomi Blake." "Not anymore," Marcus said flatly. "I'm dropping you too. Good luck." The line went dead. Naomi hurled her phone across the room, shattering a vase. She sank onto the sofa, her breaths ragged, her mind racing for a way out. Blame the neighbor? Claim she was protecting Elijah? Nothing stuck. The truth was too raw, too public. Elijah entered, Thomas limping behind him, his cane tapping softly. Naomi's head snapped up, her eyes blazing. "This is your fault," she hissed, pointing at Elijah. "You let that old man into our house, and now my life's ruined." Elijah's voice was calm but unyielding. "Your life's ruined because of what you did, Naomi. You locked my father out in the rain, lied to me, burned his letters. You brought this on yourself." Naomi's gaze darted to Thomas, venomous. "And you, showing up with your pathetic papers, thinking you can take what's mine? You're nothing." Thomas met her stare, his voice steady. "I didn't come to take, Mrs. Blake. I came for my son. You're the one who's losing everything." Naomi laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "You think you've won? I'll fight this, Elijah. I'll hire lawyers, drag you through the mud. You'll regret crossing me." Elijah stepped closer, his eyes cold. "Try it, Naomi. The world's watching, and they're on Dad's side. You're done." Naomi's defiance crumbled, tears welling as the reality hit. Her empire, her image, her power, gone. She stormed out, slamming the door, leaving Elijah and Thomas in the quiet aftermath of her collapse. A week later, the mansion felt lighter, as if Naomi's presence had been a storm cloud now dissipated. Elijah sat in his office, a manila envelope in hand, labeled "Divorce Petition." His lawyer had drafted it swiftly, citing irreconcilable differences and Naomi's documented deceit. The viral video, coupled with Thomas's loan documents, gave Elijah a strong case to protect his assets, including the mansion, which Thomas legally co-owned. Naomi was in the guest wing, banished from the master suite. She'd spent days locked away, dodging paparazzi camped outside the gates, her phone off to avoid the relentless hate. When Elijah knocked, she opened the door, her face pale, her eyes hollow. Gone was the glamorous influencer. She looked like a shadow of herself, clad in a plain sweatshirt, her hair unwashed. "What do you want?" she snapped, her voice hoarse. Elijah handed her the envelope, his tone even. "Divorce papers. Sign them, Naomi. This is over." Naomi snatched the envelope, tearing it open. Her eyes scanned the pages, widening with fury. "You're taking everything? The mansion, the cars, my lifestyle? You can't do this." "I'm not taking," Elijah said. "I'm protecting what's mine and Dad's. You've got no claim to his share, and your actions voided any goodwill. Sign, or we go to court. You won't win." Naomi's hand shook, her voice rising to a scream. "I made you, Elijah. I turned your nerdy little dreams into this empire. You owe me." Elijah's eyes narrowed. "You used me, Naomi. You erased my father, manipulated my life, and built your brand on lies. You owe him an apology, but I doubt you're capable." Naomi lunged forward, grabbing his arm. "Please, Elijah, don't do this. I'll change, I'll make it right. We can fix this together." Elijah pulled away, his voice final. "You had your chance. Sign the papers." He walked out, leaving Naomi clutching the envelope, her screams echoing down the hall. She sank to the floor, sobbing, her empire reduced to ashes. Outside, the paparazzi snapped photos, her disgrace now a public spectacle. 2 months later, the mansion had transformed. Thomas Blake, no longer a shadow in the rain, stood in the garden, pruning roses with Juan, the gardener. He wore a clean flannel shirt and sturdy shoes, his cane nearby but less needed as physical therapy strengthened his leg. His face, once gaunt, now carried a healthy flush, and his gray eyes sparkled with purpose. Elijah had appointed Thomas co-chair of his charity, Tech for Tomorrow, which developed apps for the elderly and disabled. Thomas's experience and passion made him a natural leader, and his first project, a navigation app for mobility-impaired seniors, was already in development. The role came with a generous salary, a private suite in the mansion, and a renewed sense of dignity. Inside, Elijah hosted a small gathering to celebrate Thomas's new role. Maria, reinstated as head housekeeper with a raise, served coffee to a handful of guests. Juan, Sarah from the shelter, and Evelyn Carter, whose video had sparked Naomi's downfall. The mood was warm, a stark contrast to Naomi's cold extravaganzas. Evelyn sipped her coffee, her eyes twinkling. "Thomas, I'm so glad you're here. That video. I hesitated to post it, but I couldn't let her get away with it." Thomas smiled, his voice warm. "You did the right thing, Evelyn. You gave me my son back." Elijah raised his glass, his voice steady. "To Dad, for never giving up. And to all of you, for helping me see the truth." Maria, usually reserved, spoke up. "Mr. Blake, I was scared to tell you about your father. But seeing you two together, it's worth everything." Thomas reached for her hand, his eyes misty. "Your family, Maria. You always have been." As the group laughed and shared stories, Thomas stepped onto the porch, looking out at the garden. Elijah joined him, the sunset painting the sky gold. "Feels like a dream," Thomas said softly. "Never thought I'd have a home again, let alone this." Elijah's arm rested on his father's shoulder. "You built this, Dad. That loan, your faith in me, it's all because of you." Thomas's smile was bittersweet. "I just wish I'd fought harder to reach you." "You're here now," Elijah said. "That's what matters." One crisp morning, Elijah was in the charity's office, a modest space filled with coders and volunteers. A new volunteer, Grace Harper, had joined the team, a 30-year-old social worker with warm brown eyes and a quiet strength. Grace specialized in elderly care, her passion evident in her work on Thomas's app. She'd met Thomas at the shelter, where she'd helped him with medical referrals, and her respect for him endeared her to Elijah. Grace knocked on Elijah's door, holding a tablet. "Mr. Blake, I've got the app's user feedback. Thomas's ideas are a hit with the testers." Elijah smiled, gesturing her in. "Call me Elijah. And thanks, Grace. Dad's got a knack for this." Grace sat, her voice earnest. "He's incredible. After everything he's been through, he's so hopeful. It's inspiring." Elijah leaned back, studying her. "You helped him at the shelter, didn't you? He talks about you a lot." Grace blushed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Just doing my job. Thomas is special. He deserves this happiness." Their conversation flowed easily, touching on the app, the charity, and their shared values. Elijah felt a spark, something genuine he hadn't known with Naomi. When Grace left, he watched her go, a smile lingering. Later, at the mansion, Thomas noticed Elijah's mood. They sat in the living room, a fire crackling. "You like her, don't you?" Thomas teased, his eyes twinkling. Elijah laughed, rubbing his neck. "Grace? She's different. Kind, real. But it's too soon, Dad." Thomas's voice was gentle. "Life's short, son. When you find someone who sees the world like you do, don't wait." Elijah nodded, the possibility of a new beginning taking root. 1 year later, the mansion was alive with laughter, a far cry from Naomi's sterile reign. Elijah, Thomas, and Grace sat on the porch, sharing lemonade as the sun set. The charity had grown, Thomas's app a global success, and Elijah's divorce was finalized, leaving him free of Naomi's shadow. Grace, now a close friend and potential partner, had become a fixture in their lives, her warmth a balm to old wounds. Naomi's fate was a stark contrast. Stripped of her wealth and status, she lived in a cramped studio apartment, working a low-paying retail job. Her social media accounts were ghost towns, her name synonymous with scandal. She tried to sue Elijah, but the courts upheld Thomas's claim, leaving her with nothing. Occasionally, she'd drive past the mansion, watching from afar, her heart bitter but powerless. Back on the porch, Thomas raised his glass. "To family," he said, his voice strong. "And to second chances." Grace clinked her glass against his, her smile radiant. "To new beginnings." Elijah looked at them, his heart full. "To karma," he added, his eyes on the horizon. "And to us." They laughed, the sound carrying into the evening. The mansion, once a cage of Naomi's ambition, was now a home, built on love and truth. Across the street, Evelyn Carter watched from her bungalow, smiling. Justice had prevailed, and the Blakes were whole again. I'm glad you made it to the end. I hope you enjoyed the story.